Dzień dobry Państwu, Panie Premierze, dostojni goście, witam serdecznie na tym panelu. Mieliśmy okazję porozmawiać dzisiaj z panelistami z pierwszego panelu o przeszłości. Tym większą przyjemność mam zaprosić do podróży w przyszłość, choć bardzo niedaleką czasami. Będę prowadziła panel po angielsku, natomiast wstęp zrobimy po polsku. Zapraszam panelistów. Can you join me at the stage, guys? I'd like to introduce my guests today. Notice that none of them is from the banking industry, so the discussion will be very interesting, I presume. So let me introduce them in the order they will present. Aleksander Poniewierski, EY partner and global IoT leader. Mr. Shanker Ramamurthy, General Manager, Strategy and Market Development Industry Platforms from IBM. Clive Ryan, Regional Director, Central Europe, Facebook. John Velissarios, Managing Director, Accenture, Global Blockchain Technology Lead. Sylvain Bouyon, Head of Retail, Finance and Fintech at the Center for European Policy Studies. Welcome. Today's panel discussion will be divided into some slots. All of the panelists will have short 10 to 12 minute presentations, and between presentations we'll ask other panelists to comment on that, so to keep it lively. At the end of the whole panel, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes for the questions and answers. So, as Ms. Monica said, please ask questions on Slido. We'll also have time at the end of the panel to ask them directly from the audience. So, we have a really interesting discussion ahead of us, because there is a lot going on in digital transformation in all the sectors, in all the businesses, and even in our private lives. So all of us are already familiar with IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and all of other technologies that are disruptors of our today's lives and our today's markets, and implementing how we live, how we work, and what we do. So today's discussion will be mostly dedicated to this subject, but almost all of the discussion will be dedicated to the subject of digital transformation in the financial sector as the most interesting for the audience. I would like to start with Aleksander Poniewierski, and I would like Aleksander to give us a first very broad perspective, not only what is going on in the financial market in terms of digital transformation and all the disruptors, but also generally how the digital transformation influence the business. So the floor is yours, Aleksander.
Dziękuję bardzo, profesor, serdecznie. Ja będę miał ten przywilej, że będę do Państwa mówił po polsku i tym samym wprowadzę do zagadnienia technologicznego, które zazwyczaj jest zagadnieniem bardzo, bardzo trudnym. O technologii można mówić w sposób bardzo skomplikowany, a można też mówić w sposób bardzo prosty. Ważne jest, żeby o technologii i o tym, co zaawansowana nowa technologia czyni z naszym biznesem, żeby mówić w 3 wymiarach. I ja o takich 3 wymiarach będę chciał Państwu powiedzieć.
Możemy poprosić o slajdy.
Na pewno każdy z Państwa pamięta, jak przyjeżdżał do swojej babci albo mamy na święta. Był taki moment, który się pamięta, dlatego że ciasto od babci było zawsze najlepsze. Co się takiego działo? Dlaczego to nas wszystkich dotyka? Mianowicie nasze babcie, nasze mamy żyły w trzeciej rewolucji przemysłowej. Trzecia rewolucja przemysłowa miała pewną właściwość. Mianowicie duże, skomplikowane twory wytwarzały technologie. Duże firmy technologiczne budowały rozwiązania i te rozwiązania sprzedawały, licencjonowały, patentowały. Te rozwiązania trafiały do przedsiębiorców i na podstawie tych rozwiązań przedsiębiorcy, mając swoje doświadczenie, jak ich używać, budowali wartość, budowali przewagę konkurencyjną. I tak samo jak nikt nie zrobi lepszych ciastek niż moja babcia, która miała piec najprawdopodobniej na jakąś cegłę szamotową, ale ona miała swoją recepturę. Ona wiedziała, że 2 sekundy dłużej trzeba trzymać ciasto w piecu, wtedy jest dobre. I nawet jeżeli moja mama czy moja siostra mają tą samą recepturę i mają dzisiaj piekarnik jednej, czy drugiej, czy trzeciej firmy, to ciasto smakuje inaczej. Proszę Państwa, my żyjemy w czasach tak zwanej czwartej rewolucji przemysłowej, która ma jedną cechę. Jedną. Mianowicie pierwszy raz w historii od 2, 5, 10 tysięcy lat człowiek jest w stanie w jednym miejscu zebrać wiedzę i doświadczenie. Nigdy w historii nie byliśmy w stanie w jednym miejscu posiadać wiedzy i doświadczenia. To zjawisko nazywa się z angielskiego digital twin, czyli nazywa się bliźniakiem cyfrowym. Co to jest? Ano, jest to swojego rodzaju zmierzenie, czy to klienta, czy to maszyny, czy to naszego środowiska, osensorowanie go, czyli nałożenie do niego jak największej ilości sensorów, które przekazują informacje do chmury obliczeniowej i tam za sprawą sztucznej inteligencji przewidujemy zdarzenia, które będą w przyszłości. Dlaczego powiedziałem, że to jest pierwszy raz w historii? Dlaczego powiedziałem, że to jest niezwykłe? Dlatego, że jak pamiętamy z tej mojej opowieści o babci, wartością było to, w jaki sposób ona wykorzystywała technologię. Dzisiaj, w przypadku czwartej rewolucji przemysłowej, ta wiedza i doświadczenie, czyli użycie tego cyfrowego bliźniaka, tego digital twinu, one będzie świadczyło o przewadze konkurencyjnej. Do tego za chwilę dojdę. Jeszcze jedna rzecz, na którą należy zwrócić uwagę, że o ile ta trzecia rewolucja przemysłowa wytworzyła narzędzie ochrony przedsiębiorców, które się nazywał patent, o tyle w przypadku tego cyfrowego bliźniaka, tego digital twina, my musimy zadbać o 2 podstawowe rzeczy. Pierwsza to jest w jaki sposób chronić własność intelektualną, czyli jak zapewnić, że ten twór cyfrowy, który powstał na podstawie naszych danych, że będzie pracował dla nas. I po drugie, w jaki sposób zabezpieczyć ten twór cyfrowy przeciwko nadużyciom pochodzącym z cyberprzestrzeni. To jest bardzo istotne. Natomiast czwarta rewolucja przemysłowa będzie o tym, jak ten digital twin wykorzystać do prowadzenia biznesu. I chcę Państwu pokazać, co się niewątpliwie za niedługo stanie. Jak wiedzę i doświadczenie będzie można wykorzystać.
Chyba nie mamy dźwięku, ale jest chyba niezbędny.
Sens tego filmu jest taki, że... Muszę już skończyć. Sens tego filmu jest taki, że wiedza i doświadczenie będzie służyła nam do stymulacji. Czyli naszego klienta, czy nasz silnik, czy nasz ekosystem będziemy w stanie włożyć w pewien większy proces, który sprawdzi, w jakich warunkach on będzie reagował najlepiej. Będziemy go w stanie nauczyć w warunkach laboratoryjnych. Czyli nie będziemy ćwiczyli, tylko będziemy uczyli. To jest wielka zmiana. Druga rzecz, która odróżnia trzecią od czwartej rewolucji przemysłowej, dotyczy nas. Dotyczy nas, a tak naprawdę to nowego pokolenia. Wzór, który Państwo widzicie, to jest tak zwane równanie Drake'a. To jest wzór na wszechświat. Nie wiem z jakiego powodu, ale 50 lat temu ludzie zaczęli szukać pozaziemskiej cywilizacji. Inteligencji, co do której myślę, wszyscy mamy marzenia, że istnieje. Jakoś tak się składa, że 50 lat później szukamy sztucznej inteligencji. A myślę, że zgodnie z tym, co było powiedziane na poprzednim panelu, 100 lat temu szukaliśmy w ogóle jakiejkolwiek inteligencji, żeby ruszyć z postać biznesu. Proszę Państwa, wzór Drake'a niesie za sobą bardzo istotne przesłanie. Mianowicie w 1961 roku, jak Frank Drake stworzył ten wzór, wymyślił takie przedsięwzięcie, które nazywa się Sesji Hall. Wielu z nas kontrybuuje do tego. Do 2013 roku ponad 5 milionów ludzi oddało swoją moc obliczeniową do programu Sesji, żeby szukać pozaziemskiej cywilizacji. Do tej pory, po 60 latach, przeszukano 1% nieba. Te 666 teraflopsów to jest potężna moc obliczeniowa. Proszę Państwa, w ciągu 2 lat Bitcoin, mogę prosić o slajd? Bitcoin zmotywował ludzi do użycia 34 000 razy większej mocy obliczeniowej. I tutaj, proszę Państwa, przechodzimy do drugiego elementu. Poproszę o slajd. Jest błąd na pokładzie. Dobrze. Ktoś zarabia na Bitcoin. Proszę Państwa, w czwartej rewolucji przemysłowej elementem, który jest bardzo inny, jest motywacja. Ludzi nie motywują te same wartości, które były jeszcze 50 lat temu. My to nazywamy pokoleniem Z, albo nazywamy to pokoleniem millennials. Proszę Państwa, ten aspekt, o którym będzie kolejny panel, dla technologii i rozwoju technologicznego jest kluczowym aspektem. Dzisiaj młode pokolenie nie kupuje, żeby posiadać, tylko kupuje, żeby używać. I dla potwierdzenia tego chcę pokazać Państwu statystykę, z której wynika, że to pokolenie millennials, pokolenie ludzi młodych w znacznie większym stopniu używa niż kupuje. Dla naszego biznesu będzie miało to fundamentalne znaczenie.
Senator, we run ads.
I see. Znacie Państwo, Cambridge Analytica. Kilka tygodni temu Mark Zuckerberg przed Senatem tłumaczył, jak działa jego biznes. Powstały badania po tych przesłuchaniach. Okazuje się, że ponad 50% badanych respondentów nie rozumie, jak Facebook funkcjonuje, nie rozumie, jak to jest możliwe, żeby robić biznes na tym.
Fantastycznie, że mamy speakera z Facebooka, to nam opowie.
Dokładnie tak. Proszę Państwa, nowe modele biznesowe i modele oparte na nowoczesnych technologiach funkcjonują inaczej. I nie jest to powszechna wiedza. Modele zarabiania oparte są dzisiaj... Proszę o slajd. Jest slajd. Modele są oparte na koncepcji asymetrii informacji. Szybko zmiennej asymetrii informacji. Asymetrii informacji, która występuje przez dosłownie moment. I na tej koncepcji, która jest znana z rynku ubezpieczeniowego od lat, z rynku finansowego od lat, na tej koncepcji budowane są dzisiaj marże. I proszę Państwa, te marże występują w bardzo krótkim czasie, na bardzo ograniczonym obszarze. I tylko i wyłącznie wtedy, kiedy mamy technologię typu IoT, kiedy mamy sztuczną inteligencję, czyli algorytmy, które są w stanie przewidzieć i połączyć dane w większe frakcje, jesteśmy w stanie zarabiać. To jest model przyszłości. To jest model, na którym oparte są dzisiaj tak zwane biznesy oparte na danych. 3 rzeczy Cyfrowy bliźniak, czyli budowanie modeli symulacyjnych, motywacja ludzi, którzy są waszymi klientami, waszymi pracownikami. I trzecia rzecz, modele ekonomiczne oparte na symetrii informacji i szybko zmiennych strukturach. To są 3 rzeczy, które wyznaczają trendy 4. i 5. rewolucji przemysłowej. Dziękuję.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alex. It was really very interesting. And I would like to ask Clive for the comment. There was your boss there on the picture. Can you say a few words?
Okay, so thank you for your discussion, Alex. Listen, I've worked for Facebook, so let me talk. Can I talk about Cambridge Analytica straight away? I don't want to say whole session.
You can, but you don't have to. It's your choice. Yeah.
No. It's an important thing to acknowledge that recent events like Cambridge Analytica and what was reported in the media has made us reflect a lot about the importance of and the responsibility that we play as a company to protect the users of our services data. That's the most important thing we do and have always done. And we've taken major action in the months since the story broke, not just because of Cambridge Analytica, but other things to make sure that people feel secure. And it's important to me that everyone in this room that's here looking at me leaves this room feeling safe, that our companies take your data and your experience on Facebook seriously. We've done 6 things. Number 1, we reviewed every single app that uses Facebook's data and shut it down where we felt that it was actually not acting correctly. Number 2, we've informed all the users that might have been affected by applications using their data in less than transparent ways. They know about it, they have to be told about it. Number 3, we've actually deactivated all the apps that use Facebook data that you haven't used in the past 3 months. You have to reactivate them. Number 4, we're encouraging our users to review all the apps they use on an ongoing basis and to manage it appropriately. So de-log out or leave the membership of certain apps that are not useful to you anymore. Number 5, we've done further work on the platform to further restrict access to the data on Facebook by making the access mechanisms even more strict. And number 6, we've actually introduced a reward program, or a bounty program we call it, for our community, our large 2.2 billion users that use our services on a monthly basis to report where they believe misappropriate behaviour is happening. And then lastly, on top of all those 6 things, we're doing ongoing work to make sure advertising on Facebook, as Mark said, we sell ads, to make that even more transparent, more controllable, and more open for our users. So that's what we've done. Thanks for bringing it up. I do think, though, you raised an interesting point, Alex, is does the people that use these technology services really understand how they work? And it was clear from the questions that the legislature were asking that maybe it's very, very complicated for certain parts of our world. We have to make it simple. It is too complicated. We have to make it simple. And all of us in this industry are striving to make it easy and understandable for every user of service. We do sell ads on Facebook, but we sell ads to help pay for the service that's completely free for the 2.2 billion users that use our service. So that's what I'd say. But I don't want this session to be all about Facebook, so let me ask my colleague John to comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Presentation.
Now, John Velissarios, can you also comment on Aleksander's presentation? Do you agree with all these forces, or you want to add something to that?
Sure. I'll just give a practical sort of experience given the talk about the digital twin. Before I do that, though, I actually was one of those people that actually did look for extraterrestrial life on Sesja. So I did have, I was using my computer to yeah. So I think the concept of digital twin will enable a new sort of entirely new markets that we never sort of foreseen before. Just to make it a little bit more practical on some of the experiences that I've had with some clients that we've been working with. One of the projects that we looked at was actually an airplane engine and making an entire digital twin of an airplane engine. So everything right down to the screw, the nut and bolt, the blade, everything, every part of an airplane engine was tracked, put on a blockchain, and created an entire digital twin copy of exactly that engine. So down the road, when you're looking at maintenance of an aircraft, you actually know exactly where this engine has been its entire life, and the whole lineage of every single part that went into it. that can create a tremendous amount of value, not only for the engine manufacturers and the airplanes that are using them, but also for making sure that these things, these components, these parts, follow the right sort of maintenance procedures and everything. Everything we travel, extensively is. We all travel extensively, and so knowing that everything that's gone into an airplane engine is actually very valuable for us. So from a safety perspective, but also from a digital economy perspective, this opens up entirely new business models that we never thought of before. And I think the digital twin concept, I think, will catch on, and there's a lot of things that are very beneficial for it from many different industries.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else who wants to add to this point? If not, we can go a little bit deeper with our discussion. We already know from Alex what is the umbrella view on the digital transformation processes for the business. So now I would like to ask Shanker to give us the perspective of what's possible for the financial sector and banks. What are the possible scenarios of the development of the in this digital transformation time?
Thank you very much. Maybe I should pick up on where Alex left off. He talked about data asymmetry as part of this new business model. I want to spend a few minutes just giving you a sense for why it is we are where we are, in that every industry is actually transitioning from selling products to moving to selling services, or perhaps more importantly, experience. This transition from a product to a services and experience economy driven by what people call big data and analytics is a result of some very powerful technological forces that have been underpinning this for actually the last 5 decades or so. If I can have the first chart up, please. The fusion of these, what we call exponential technologies, is quite fascinating. Most of us have heard of what's called Moore's Law. Moore's Law actually says the power of a computer chip doubles every 18 months or so. Now, to put that into context, this smartphone that I hold in my hand today, each of us have one. In 1969, when man landed on the moon, would have cost $1 trillion. $1 trillion, because 2 to the power 30 is $1 billion, and these phones are maybe $600-700 a pop, so it's almost $1 trillion. Moore's Law has been continuing to expand the power of compute capability, doubling it every 18 months or so. That then enabled what's called Metcalfe's Law. Metcalfe's Law talks about something called network effects. The power of the network is a square of the number of nodes in the network. So something like Facebook has 1 billion plus users, of WhatsApp and Google. All these applications have billions of users potentially communicating with each other, creating an extraordinary amount of data that can be monetized. And many of the digital businesses today are driven by the combination of Moore's Law and Metcalfe's Law. Something interesting is happening today, which is what people call machine learning and artificial intelligence, what at IBM we call Watson's Law. When machines are able to interrogate data and then program themselves, you have this growth of not just data and knowledge, but ability to take that data and knowledge and convert that into fundamentally new business models with exponential learning. That's where we are today, which means every single industry is being, if I can go to the next chart, every single industry is being fundamentally changed by the combination of these exponential technologies. Because we move into what we call an experience economy, where technology forces are creating new experiences. And the generation Y that Alex talked about, it's all about having this incredible user experience with a very high net promoter score, and really dramatically changing every industry. The electronics industry is no longer about products, it's about services. The automobile industry is actually no longer about manufacturing. On the back of electric and mobility, the automobile industry over the next 5 years is going to be mobility as a service. The insurance industry is not about claims, it's about preventing claims from happening. Every industry is changing, and is changing profoundly and fundamentally, and over the next 5 years, you're going to see continued exponential change. So what does it mean for financial institutions? Banks will have to recreate their technology and business architecture on the back of this explosion of exponential technologies. Traditional models are going to be challenged by non-traditional competitors, retailers, fintechs, competitors that we've never seen before are eroding the profit pools of financial institutions. Just to give you a couple of examples, $500 billion worldwide is the revenue that financial institutions get from payments. But if you look at what's happening in much of Asia, Ant Financial from Alibaba, Tencent, they are actually invading the space of a traditional financial institution. In the US, companies like Amazon and PayPal are moving into payments and other aspects of the financial services value chain which are not tightly regulated. That's the world we are going to live in. And to win in this world, banks will have to have the same powerful customer experience that we as consumers are increasingly expecting in the digital economy, on the back of our cell phones and the smart apps we see in them. The products, manufacturing products need not necessarily be done within an enterprise boundaries, within the bank's boundaries. It can be actually leased from third parties that manufacture it. Areas like wealth management with robo-advisors and other capabilities are commoditizing what used to be extremely profitable profit pools. Operations, there are banks that are actually now starting to design their back office. In fact, there's a bank called DBS in Singapore. Piyush Gupta, the CEO, talks about design for no operations, using robotics and straight-through processing to virtually eliminate the back office. Leveraging the huge amounts of proprietary data that banks have to convert that into insights that can drive superior value to their customers, while at the same time becoming much more secure and compliant. Thinking about banking as a set of capabilities that you can mix and match, and recognizing your competitors are not going to be who you competed with yesterday or today, but a bunch of new competitors, is going to be at the heart of reinventing the banking franchise. It's critical. And as part of this, every enterprise in this new exponential technology era have to think about what we in IBM call the platform world, which is why IBM created the industry platform unit a couple of years ago. We think in terms of three types of platforms. Technology, and by the way, most of these platforms are platforms you need not own, you could rent. Technology platforms are the foundational technology capability that you need to run your data centers, your networks, and cloud and blockchain and capabilities like that enable the ability to rent some of those technology platforms. Process platforms are about building a capability once that multiple enterprises can take advantage of. And market platforms are what we call multi-sided or many-to-many platforms, where you bring multiple buyers and sellers together to actually operate with you as the entity building this platform at the center. And again, if you think about all the new models that everyone talks about, where outside of financial services, the likes of Uber and Airbnb and Facebook and Google, or even increasingly within financial services with robo-advisors and P2P and B2B2C models, they're all increasingly moving towards market platforms. Turns out that these platform models are naturally oligopolistic, which is another way of saying a small number of winners disproportionately take most of the economic value that accrues from these models. To just give you one data point, Alibaba is going to spin out Ant Financial, which really started as a payment provider only 3-4 years ago. It's currently valued at $150 billion. $150 billion. That's more than much of the broker-dealers that we've all heard of, the Goldmans, the Morgan Stanleys. You know, think about all the large players around the world. These guys are already bigger than that with a lot more upside. That's the world we're going to live in, and every financial institution will have to recreate itself to survive and thrive, taking advantage of the data that they have. And to help with that, we in IBM are building out a bunch of platforms at the technology level, at the process level, and the market platform level to enable financial institutions to thrive in this coming new world of exponential technologies, where no incumbents' profit pools are safe, where no business models are forever, and you've got to reinvent yourself in the platform ecosystem and business model of tomorrow. Given this world of disruption, the question for you is, as a financial institution, as a bank, as you look out to the next 5 years, is your strategy bold enough? Are you learning and executing fast enough? Do you have what it really takes to transform your people and your business model? Because like it or not, traditional and non-traditional competitors are going to come after the most profitable parts of your value chain. The barbarians are at the gate, and we got to react and react fast.
Thank you so much, Shanker. That was very interesting questions at the end. I think every company should ask the question to them. I would like to ask Sylvain to comment on the Shanker presentation. Do you agree, or do you have something to add to this?
Thank you for this very passionate presentation. I'm the troublemaker, I think, here, because you're all consultants or business, and I'm the only one to be more on the policy side than think tank. So I will take this role with pleasure and try to talk to you. So there is a question about branding. You say banks need to change, and the premise of technologies need to transform to do more things. But what is a bank? I mean, if I can ask you which bank you put your money, Shanker, I don't know if you can tell me this, the name of the bank, but would you accept to travel with your bank, for example? Traveling agency, I mean, like...
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask the question. When it comes to things like deposits, I very much want my money in a traditional regulated bank, because I know if the bank goes belly up, if the bank goes belly up, the regulators are going to stand by to ensure things get bailed out. On the other hand, when I borrow my money, I'm not going to go to a bank if someone else can offer the price point at a different price point, because it's the bank's problem to collect the money from me. When it comes to wealth management and financial advice, I'm going to go to the provider that provides it to me at the most compelling price point, and I can tell you, particularly in the US, the robo-advisors are taking over. With my daughters, they don't think of a bank as the place they go to for payments, for transferring value. They go to PayPal, they go to Venmo, they go to Ant, they go to WePay. And banks are getting completely locked out in many markets from areas like robo-advisory, like payments, like peer-to-peer lending. So yeah, in regulated spaces where it's advantageous to the consumer, I very much want my deposit with the bank, but not for the rest.
Okay, so you explained different types of financial services, and I was telling you about complete different things, complete different services, because now we have, for example, this PSD2, that is supposed to open the data of banks to a lot of third-party providers, and I'm pretty sure from discussion I had with them, some could do crazy things with that. What I mean by crazy, I mean things which are really not related to banks, like they getting your data and see how much you spend for shopping. On the hill, they have all the data and say, okay, look, we have better providers, I mean, for giving you food and things like this. Can the bank do that?
You know, it's a great question. So as an incumbent, I really do believe banks have an extreme and frankly an unfair advantage, which we ought to capitalize on. On the one hand, there are regulatory barriers. On the other hand, traditional consumers tend to be conservative. On the other hand, the opportunity is to take this incredible amount of data that a bank has about its customers, and time series data going back multiple years, and convert that into insights using traditional analytics and advanced analytics and machine learning. I will tell you that the non-traditional competitors are starting there. They're taking the massive amount of data they have, and they're driving incredibly sophisticated algorithms, machine learning algorithms, to convert that data into insights. And it's absolutely critical for financial institutions to go up that learning curve, because it's a steep learning curve, and it's a virtuous cycle, and it takes a while to master the ability to take advantage of unstructured voice and other kinds of data, which is what the bank's non-traditional competitors are doing today.
Thank you for your answer. I have another question. So you mentioned the responsibility of banks to digitalize, but you were really high level. I mean, you didn't enter really the banking services. If I go by segments, the speed of digitalization is quite different from one segment to another. At the consumer, I would tend to believe it's going very fast. I take SME segment, I tend to believe it's very slow. And one of the reasons for this is that you also have the digitalization of the client himself. As a consumer, I think almost everyone has a smartphone here. So it's easy to do somehow to interact with the consumer via digital channels. For SMEs, you know, you have the cash management infrastructure, or you even the trade finance. Even inside SMEs, it's still very manual. It's still, for banks, very challenging to do this. So I don't know, IBM, as you have a broad view of the whole economy, or you think this, because it's more, I believe it's more interactive between the banks and the clients. And for corporations, if you don't digitalize sufficiently these companies, it will never happen.
It's a great point. It turns out, if you roll the clock back 20, 30, 40 years, most of the innovation in technology was happening in B2B, because computing was expensive and all the innovation required multi-million dollars of investment. It turns out almost all the innovation today is happening in the B2C world. And talking about financial services in particular, because financial services was one of the first industries to digitize, to automate, we have layer upon layer upon layer of legacy technology. And actually changing all of that to rapidly digitize the B2B interaction is an extremely hard problem, both for the bank and for the corporate at the other end. But this is what people call the Innovators Dilemma. Clayton Christensen has written about it years ago. And the premise is, the incumbent has this disadvantage, but the barbarian at the gates, the non-traditional competitor, does not have that impediment. They're going to go after the most profitable parts of the banking franchise, whether it be B2C or B2B or B2B2C. And they're going to they're going to improve the quality of their product and capability such that they slowly work their way up the stack. A perfect example is what Amazon is doing in the US already. Because they provide the marketplace, they know so much about small and medium-sized enterprises. Now they're able to lend money to them, knowing exactly what their financial position is. And because taking advantage of big data is in their DNA, they're just able to extend it into lending. And therein lies the challenge for the traditional financial institution, which is why when I explained what Piyush Gupta is doing in DBS in Singapore, he's starting from the premise that I'm going to have a design for no operations in my operation shop, using robotics and automation to try and eliminate my back office so I go completely digital. It's a long and tough journey. The quicker we move down that path, the better for us as incumbents.
Okay, I'd like to come back to the branding for a while and ask Aleksander, what do you think? What kind of financial institution would your kids choose? The traditional bank, or rather something closer to Revolut?
In my opinion, absolutely the Revolut, because for our generation, the trust seems and sits in between the relation of 2 or 3 parties. For our kids and for young generation, for, let me say, half of this room, the trust sits in relation only. And the CEO of Airbnb is usually trying to show what trust really means. And the exercise is about unlocking the telephone, unlocking the smartphone, and he's asking you to give your unlocked smartphone to your neighbor at the left or at the right. And at the top of the ballroom, there are plenty of cameras. And each time, after this exercise, they are presenting results. The new generation is very open. I mean, they unlock the phone and they are giving the phone to the right or to the left. Let me say, my generation and above, so the, let me say, semi-young generation, is thinking whether they will give to the left or to the right, and the old generation is just saying no. It is really interesting to see how different fraction on the same ballroom reacts for the same comment. Very, very, very interesting to see.
Thank you so much. There is no discussion about digital transformation, digital revolution, without talking about Facebook as well. It was the brand that was raised here already several times. Facebook changes how we communicate, changes how we behave, what we know about other people, how the brands promote, and so will it also influence the financial sector, or is it influencing the financial sector anyhow? Can we ask you, Clive, to give us the presentation first?
Good afternoon. Who works in a bank? Who works in insurance?
Who doesn't work?
Everyone here? Nobody here. What I wanted to do actually is build on the great discussions my colleagues have already landed with you, and tell you a couple of stories about how I see technical and technology revolution in financial services. Now, the context to all of this is, although I now work with Facebook, I was born way before Facebook was invented, as you can probably tell. So I had a career before Facebook, and I actually started in banking. In fact, I started building banking systems, and that's where my story starts. We in Facebook have this, like other organizations, have the concept of hacking. We have 8-hour sprints to develop new code, new services that we do every 5 or 6 or 12 weeks. We're actually just completing our 60th hack for the company in 2 weeks' time. So we have this program that we have with our clients called Hack the Future, thinking about the future. And I thought today's Congress was a fantastic way to think about how we think about the future, and maybe not so grand terms as some of my colleagues. My story starts on July 4th, 1961, and in the UK, this is the first implementation of a computer, a mainframe computer for a European retail bank. And it was actually a bit of a retirement journey by the chairman, A.W. Tuke, who had been the chairman of Barclays Bank, as it's known in the UK, and he's about to retire in his last 2 years. And Barclays had been successful, but was losing share quite rapidly. You know, other challenger banks back in the 60s were actually taking as customers, and it couldn't grow as fast, principally because it didn't adopt tabulating machines and calculation machines as quickly as the others did. So A.W. Tuke decided to change this direction, actually invest in a mainframe computer They built a big computer center around this machine in 1961, 57 years ago. It was a mainframe computer bought from EMI. They don't make computers anymore. And its cost, I know for sure, was £125,000 to buy that hardware. And that enabled Barclays to get back onto winning market share, and actually grew from, at that point in time, less than 25,000 employees to 57,000 employees 9 years later, and opened up to 1,500 branches. So technology back in that day was very much about saving time to do more work with less, and to transact large volumes very, very quickly. This is one of the examples, before I joined Facebook, this is what I did. I designed banking systems as an example of a core banking system. And it's highly complicated, as you can see. I spent the first 10 years of my career actually with banks, trying to convert retail banks with only selling banking services into bank assurance providers that are doing insurance services as well. And a lot of the work we did was actually trying to build on top of existing legacy systems. And if you move forward to today, the change is happening in the industry. A lot of the incumbents, the existing banks and insurance companies that exist today, can't move as fast, not because they can't or don't want to or haven't got the money, but they're still running the core system on something like this, which is very hard to unput and pick together. Now, it's very similar to another industry I worked in. Prior to joining Facebook, I worked in telecoms. Calling out my colleague John, the company he works for, Accenture. Accenture had a series of reports called Banking 2020. And back in 2013, they made this interesting comparison between banking and telecoms. In Poland, you've got a very regulated telecoms market. It's very competitive. We know that. But the competitive nature of telecoms actually was created by market conditions that started in the US back in 1984 when AT&T was broken up. And that pervaded into Europe. And that created new, nimble players and also forced the existing incumbents to innovate more quickly to stay in business. And we think something similar is happening in banking and insurance services today. There are lots of examples of organizations being called out already. Shanker called it Vimo, PayPal. I work with a client in Germany called N26. And they are mobile-only services, mobile-first services to capture financial services opportunity. And the reason for that is, actually, the disruption that's happening in this fourth industrial revolution that Alex talked about isn't just a single technology. Let me explain that. The first, second and third industrial revolutions were driven by the introduction of steam in the first industrial revolution, introduction of electricity in the second, the introduction of robotics and computing technology in the third, and the fourth industrial revolution is far more complex because there are many, many technologies causing disruption in the industries, and there's 6 I've called out there. I'm going to talk about 2 of them in particular and give you examples of some people today, some organizations today who are using mobile and mobile-first services, artificial intelligence, and digitalization in terms of messaging. Mobile first is the way to go to market today. It took radio 38 years from its inception to reach an audience of 50 million people. It took TV 13 years, and it took mobile or mobile telephony, mobile devices, 10 years to reach 2 billion people. There are over 7.5 billion devices in the world, more people than are in the world. In fact, that threshold of people versus devices was crossed, I'm reliably told, on October the 4th, 2016. So over 2 years ago. So to reach an audience, it has to be mobile first, and in some cases mobile only. And if you think about the benefits of mobility and those devices it's having on the world, instead of just generating profits and returns for banking institutions, it's actually doing good for the world. What I'm showing you is the penetration of accounts, financial services, transaction capabilities in the world over the past 6-7 years. And you can see that the ownership or ability to do commercial transactions to a bank has exploded. There's actually now 5 billion people that have access to banking services now, and that has increased by over 500 million people just in those 5 years. And if you look at the world and where people are unbanked, i.e. where people don't have access to financial services, and to cross-reference that map where the penetration in mobile devices is highest, is very, very similar. So to bank the unbanked has to be mobile first, has to be mobile only. To bank the younger population has to be mobile first, has to be mobile only, and trying to bolt on that mobile first thinking into the business architectures is something that Shanker and IBM have explained already how they might do that. I wanted to tell you some more stories of real examples of clients we're working with. And our view in Facebook is we're not going to be a bank, we're not a bank, but we do have financial services organizations on our platform doing three things: increasing their efficiency, scaling their business more effectively, and obviously delivering more profitability. I want to just give you some examples of those before we finish. The first is increasing efficiency. I mentioned that Barclays Bank introduced the computer system in 1961. Back in the 1960s, it was actually illegal for banks to advertise their services. The first bank that did any advertising or marketing was again Barclays in 1966, when they were introducing the Barclay card. And they actually used a small subsidiary bank they had in Scotland to do that, so that they bypassed the anti-advertising laws in the UK in the 60s. So it's not that long ago, but it feels centuries ago. But when you're a financial services institution, acquiring customers quickly is really important. And Starling Bank in the UK, which has been in existence less than 3 years, are a mobile-first bank that are growing from the UK and going into Europe. And they've used Facebook services to, one, reduce the cost of account acquisition significantly by 36%, increase the likelihood of an account sign-on, with someone signing for their services actually opening an account and transacting, and actually setting on extra products on top of that, because it's all mobile first. Sopotie is actually a B2B financial services player out of Germany that are enabling small businesses, taxi drivers, stall owners, to actually install their devices to enable them to take credit card transactions through a clever little device. And they're actually building demand for their services through a product that Facebook has as part of its family called Instagram and Instagram Stories. And we're showing this because the way banks typically market isn't the way people on these services use Instagram and Facebook. They use video, they use stories, and we can see this test from Sopotie that the three markets in Ireland, France, and Italy got significant cost reductions in their marketing activities. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. I noticed from walking around the corridor earlier on that a number of our breakout sessions are talking about machine learning. I know Accenture are talking about it across the corridor. And it is a big part of what our clients are doing to scale their business. I want to talk about it in terms of messaging. We're doing some work with Allianz in France to mobile enable their quote engine. One of the big problems with mobile technology is, yes, people use the devices more and more every day, but if you're trying to apply for an insurance product, there's an awful lot of information you have to provide. And if you're doing it on a PC, you can type it in, spend some time. But if you do it on a mobile device, it's much more difficult. If you're my age, you can't see, so it's difficult to type. And generally, it takes people 38% more time to complete a form on a mobile device compared to a PC. So therefore, the lead conversion or the successful data capture on a mobile is really, really bad if you're using a form base to do that. Well, Allianz bypassed the problem by using a messaging application on Facebook Messenger to have an interaction with a client who's interested in purchasing an insurance product. And it's not based on a form, it's based on some identity sharing and some real language conversation happening between an agent and the user, or in the back, a script or a piece of robotics, a software code, or indeed a bot, as the term is called, to automate that transaction. AXA in France have gone one step further in that they're trying to target the younger audience, that they all know they're on mobile only, and messenger and messaging is a big part of what they spend their day on. So they created a sub-brand, a different business effectively as part of the AXA family called Switch. And everything that they do for that younger population is done through Messenger and clever automation to reduce the turnaround times and the number of staff you need to do to manage these message queues. So Messenger and artificial intelligence is a big trend that we see as part of the technology revolution. The thing about these older organizations, AXA and Allianz, they still have their legacy systems. They haven't changed their core insurance system. It's still there. They've actually put a skin on front of that that still integrates with back-end systems, but using clever technology doesn't look like that. It feels far more contemporaneous and modern. And lastly, I want to talk about scale. We've done some research with Boston Consulting Group just on understanding how mobile can actually change the economics of the financial services institution. And just using a simple ratio of number of customers to employees, typically globally, we find that a bank, a retail bank, has about 250 to 300 customers per employee. Insurance is a bit higher. Some of the robot advisors in the US are higher, 2,500. But for a mobile business like us, and we're all mobile, we have actually over 100,000 clients per employee. And we're not suggesting that that's a benchmark for financial services. But certainly going mobile first or mobile only is a way to change the economics, to scale your markets beyond the current economics you currently face as part of a branch architecture, or indeed just an online presence. I'm referring to that Boston Consulting Group study. We looked at what are the organizational differences between a technology advanced incumbent versus a technology innovating disruptor in financial services across a couple of dimensions. So we found that ideally and usually successful disruptors are actually centralized, not decentralized in terms of structure. They have ad hoc development processes rather than systematic development processes. They do rapid experimenting rather than long programs of innovation, that they call innovation. Rapid experimenting, testing all of the time. Their skill sets are very much on marketing technologists, not just deep skill sets and specializations. And lastly, to Shanker's point, when they build up their platforms, they usually buy versus build. They partner with third parties and white label payment providers to assemble the architecture they need to do business. So we use this comparison with our clients to figure out where, if you're actually an already established business, an established financial services player, how can you adopt some of the characteristics of a disruptor to move further along that mobile first, mobile only world that we see as being critically important for success in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clive. We have to speed up a bit, so I asked for a short comment. Shanker.
So the couple of things that Clive mentioned, I just wanted to circle back to both Messenger and mobile. Those are really going to be extremely disruptive to the banking ecosystem as these platforms, these consumer platforms, continue to grow in strength, whether it be Facebook in much of the mature markets, or whether it be the Alibabas and the Tencents and so on, because they're about capturing the consumers and helping them with a broad range of things. And many of the things that are traditional banking capability will automatically get roped into that process in that platform, not because these platforms are looking to compete with banking, but they're going to follow their consumers where the consumer wants to go. Like in India, WhatsApp is getting an extraordinary amount of payments happening on the back of it automatically. So that is the insidious challenge that banks have to be worried about and thinking through when it comes to things like payments, robo-advisors, basic lending and other capabilities. The next 5 years are going to be extremely disruptive as these platforms become pretty much the natural way in which we interact with computers.
Thank you so much. John, would you like to add something?
I just wanted to add, I guess, the role of digital identity in all of this. It's an enabling sort of capability that allows sort of the bank of the future to be implemented in reality today. I think a lot of these sort of, financial institutions that are popping up, that this wouldn't be possible without sort of some form of digital identity in whatever format that comes in. And I think it's sort of an invisible force that's there, and that's enabling a lot of this stuff to actually take off.
Thank you. Having you keeping microphone, we would like to ask you, John, now to move slightly to another subject, but also within the area of financial technologies, because we would like you to tell us a bit more about the future concept of money, about such a hot subject like digital currencies and what's going on with all those bitcoins and how it's going to influence our world, which is like an extremely interesting subject today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask us to look a little bit into the future. This presentation is about sort of the revolution of money and where things are potentially going to be going in the very near future. So before getting into the details of this, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. Obviously, lots of discussion around cryptocurrencies as they are today, but there are many different flavors of these cryptocurrencies, and what I'm going to show is sort of where this potentially could go, or where it actually is going, and where the future is not that far away. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is why does this all matter to the financial system? We talk a lot about sort of cryptocurrencies today, and what we're seeing is that these cryptocurrencies have potentially could have potentially an impact on sort of financial markets. That's how it sort of came about, and that's why there was been so much interest about this. Fundamentally, there's a couple of things, a couple of reasons behind it. One is loss of control, potential loss of revenue, even a challenger. It's a challenging technology, and why this is sort of it's captured the imagination of not only sort of consumers and investors, but also the financial marketplace as well. So this is one of the reasons why we're sort of seeing so much innovation that's taking place with regards to this technology and so on. And the challenge, of course, is that it could potentially eliminate the need for traditional players in the marketplace. So that is one of the key sort of considerations as well. But before we do that, I just wanted to mention what exactly is a digital currency, and what I want to mention here is that fundamentally it's a crypto representation of some form of value. That value could be sort of a fiat currency, it could be a sort of imaginary token that's been made up, or whatever it is. It's something that possesses some value to someone that's willing to exchange it. But it is a cryptocurrency. It's not an electronic, purely 1 and 0 sitting in some database. It's actually a private key that's being used and traded and actively being moved around in its format. So there are some fundamental differences. So just to level set, it's a token. It's a cryptographic token that's used. With it, there's a number of things that you have to keep in mind, things like around private keys and how you manage it, a very important part of it. Security is a fundamental part of it. There is an element of how anonymous this token is, or this cryptocurrency is. So you go from sort of complete verifiability of the identity all the way through to pseudo-anonymity. There's no real anonymity, pure anonymity in any of these sort of cryptocurrencies. But the role of the banks is very key. There's a role there that could be taken by the financial institutions, either commercial banks and also central banks, to look at how they can actually implement such technologies and for their benefit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what the differences are. So here on the upper part of the slide, you have a financial, sort of a central bank issuing a currency, using sort of a financial, a bank in the middle, and a consumer on the right-hand side. With a cryptocurrency, you're eliminating sort of the role of the intermediary. It doesn't mean that you have to completely eliminate them. They can play a different type of role, but it's not necessary that they're there. So central banks could actually issue and put fiat currency into circulation directly in the hands of consumers, similar to like a crypto banknote, basically. So this is where the revolution part comes in, because now this all of a sudden removes intermediaries in the marketplace that can play a different type of a role, but still this is where the challenge lies. Before I do that as well, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of what are the different types of models that are out there. So there are everything from the right-hand side that you see in terms of consumer cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoins, Ethers, and various other types of many implemented sort of consumer-focused ones, implemented by themselves as well. So it's not necessarily by any institution either. There's the consortium play, there's a commercial bank play, and then there's also a central bank play. So there's a wide range of different cryptocurrencies, and that's a very important distinction to make, because the common misconception is that it's only sort of a certain type. What we're talking about as well in the future is that potentially that there will be a lot of central bank issued cryptocurrencies, and that will change the financial marketplace. And I'll show you what we see going on around the world. And to that point, when you're talking about central bank cryptocurrencies, there are some really key messages that we want to explain. Why would you do this? What are some of the success factors? It has to be cost effective to use, it has to be available immediately, it has to be instantly liquid, free from fractional reserve banks, so you can't deposit and re-lend it out. That's the whole idea behind some of these, especially when they're put in custody. And it has to add purpose to economic activity. So some of these things are not found in sort of the cryptocurrencies that you see in the marketplace today, but potentially will be found in ones that get implemented in the near future. They also have to have other non-monetary sort of key success factors. It has to be trusted, it has to be secure, of course, so that you know that it's not being hacked or copied or stolen, basically, governed and regulated, have standards and be legitimate, and have finally transaction finality behind it. A very important point. So how can financial markets launch this? We already see flavors of this coming out in the marketplace. The lower one, as you can see, is sort of things that are already there. Consortium plays are already there. So they're already sort of, banks are coming together to say, we're going to create our own, we're going to ring fence some reserves, and we're going to tokenize it, we're going to use it to settle transactions more effectively, more efficiently in the marketplace. There's also commercial banks that are doing the same thing as well. So they're the ones that are taking their own reserves and tokenizing and putting to the hands of the businesses that they transact with. So one of the things as well for benefits that we see is immediate use of assets, immediate access to liquidity, freeing up working capital, and those kind of benefits that make the usage of this kind of cryptocurrencies very important. Recently, we just finishing an engagement in Canada. It's quite public, around an exchange and the central bank money using to settle transactions. And this is in the wholesale marketplace. So actually, there's a lot of benefits there that you see in the marketplace. Some additional benefits are sort of boosting economic growth all the way through to lowering costs and allowing for full traceability of transactions. So I'm not going to go through the details of this because I spent quite a bit of time. Other things I wanted to mention is that what's happening around the world. So this slide is really just a survey of everything that we've experienced. I've been focusing in this area for a number of years now. I've been working with central banks around the world and with a lot of market infrastructure players. This slide talks to sort of the initiatives that are out there, and what I'm doing is I'm building a picture. So the first picture is on the retail side. So what we're seeing on the retail side is very limited, but there is definitely a lot of interest, and what we mean by that is sort of where these initiatives are taking off and where they're using sort of it for retail transactions. The second one is around wholesale. So on the wholesale market, there's a lot of applications for cryptocurrencies, and that's quite extensive. So there's a lot of new innovations and new developments in the wholesale marketplace. Everything from interest all the way through to implementation, and these are being used for those kind of transactions. So as we sort of see time progressing, we're going to see sort of the map getting more and more purple, and I expect this to, in a number of years, to actually be more complete than what you see here today. So this is a glimpse into the future of what's going on. We talk a lot about cryptocurrencies. We talk a lot about different flavors of cryptocurrencies, but there's definitely an interest in initiatives around the world to actually implement and put these things out into production and to use them for settlement, more efficient market, settling transactions and getting market efficiencies out. There are even some retail sort of applications of this as well in certain countries where it's already digital. Most of the sort of financial marketplace is already digital and non-paper based or banknote based, like in the Nordics, for instance. And this is an interesting area where we see a lot of innovation happening, and this will open up a lot of other opportunities. And finally, what I want to show is the non-sort of CBDC, non-central bank digital currencies. You can see that the attitude about this is very mixed. Everything from very hostile and very sort of advocates on one side, hostiles on the other. So there's a lot of discrepancy, I guess, around the globe with regards to how these are being perceived and being sort of adopted and used and so on. So just the perspective of it from a non-central bank currency point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Clive, I noticed you were writing down, so you probably want to comment on that. Is Facebook going to have its own currency on blockchain?
No. Let me be very, very clear about that. No. But the reason I say, John, maybe I, in recent weeks, have been at a number of financial services technology conferences. There was one in Dublin last week, and blockchain, Bitcoin is the hot topic. Why do I take so many notes all the time is I learn something new incrementally about it all the time, even though I've gone to a lot of conferences. and this is my fear, is it hyper-reality? I'm thinking of back to the dot-com booms, and particularly if it is reality, where are the skills this going to come from? Because staffing these projects and engagements is a very technical background you need to have, and I don't think we've built those skills in Europe to the extent we might need to.
So just to comment on whether it's hyper-reality, this is becoming increasingly, more and more pervasive in the conversations that we're having. A couple of years ago, it was just a small percentage. Now it's becoming more and more sort of mainstream in terms of the dialogue that we're having with the business. And as you can see from this topic that I just presented, this is quite strategic. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're talking about transforming cash in the way that's being sort of issued in society and used by commercial banks, retail applications, and even wider sort of, it has implications in the marketplace. And so I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm the same thing. I learn something all the time every time I attend this, and I'm immersed 200% in this topic. And the skills required in order to implement these there's a huge shortage. So universities, academics, even industry itself has to invest time into focusing in this area, researching these topics, understand how relevant they are for themselves, and also being able to navigate, what's hype for them at the end of the day, or what's reality for them, because everything, it could be, very applicable or not applicable at all for their business, but they need to make that assessment themselves. And so the education part of it is very important. I mean, even in our organization, last week I spent, a whole week, 4 full days, teaching an academy to our internal people. It's the 10th one that we've run in a year. And that's all we spend a lot of time doing. We make a huge investment in doing it, and we do it because we expect this to be an order of magnitude bigger than what it is. And I think this is where it's going. We have to be sort of ready for it. So there's this huge skills shortage, and we do need to have the resources available and trained up in order to really be ready for it.
Thank you so much. And Shanker, would you like to shortly comment, because we have to move?
So indeed, like with many technologies, I think we underestimate the impact in the long term and overestimate the impact in the short term. I think blockchain is going to be fundamentally transformative. It's probably going to take a 5-year horizon before you see the big sea change start to happen. And CBDC is probably one of the first steps, stable currencies. But then you're going to see the tokenization of the entire classes of assets that today are not able to be traded. So why only buy and sell apartments or houses? Why not fractional ownership in apartments and houses? Those kind of things can only happen on the back of blockchain. It's for real. We are in the if you think about the internet, we are in the pre-TCP/IP world in terms of the internet. When I compare blockchain to internet, when we have the standards, whether it be Hyperledger, which is the open standard IBM is progressing, or others, Ethereum Enterprise Alliance is another one. Once the standard is established, you can have the dial tone. On top of it, you can build the smart applications. Then innovation is going to happen at a much, much faster pace. And it's real and it's coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. We're slowly moving to the next subject, which is last but not least at all, because we are moving into cybersecurity area. There is no discussion, so I'd like to ask Sylvain to present for us shortly, because there is no other discussion if we have blockchain, if we work with AI, IoT, and data analytics in finance. It's impossible not to mention about cybersecurity, because there is a huge threat on that side. So, what is the CEPS voice?
Thank you. So, the dark side for Bouyon. I don't think it was mentioned even once, cybersecurity. Maybe in your title, Hack the Future. If you go in front of the regulators and you tell them, let's hack the future, we'll have some troubles. So, now, without joking, I mean, if it's properly handled, cybersecurity, I don't think it would be, it is an issue, but it needs to be properly handled. So, just to put the context, last year, we had these big cyber attacks, which are multi-sectoral, multi-country, like WannaCry. And of course, he built like the idea among, he confirmed the idea that it is one of the top business risks at the moment, which was not the case 5 years ago. If you go to the main business risk in the strategic board and in how they consider it, 5 years ago it was nowhere, now it's in the top 2 or 3 in general. Obviously, there is a policy reaction behind at EU and national level. So last September, we had President Shanker of the European Commission announcing a cyber package. So as we are based in Brussels as independent think tank, we try to feed the EU agenda on this issue. So we had 3 task forces on cybersecurity, so we love it. And one of them is specifically designed for finance. So if you like the topic, I invite you to download it on our website. So here what I did, I just put some of the main policy recommendations. So I don't think we have enough time to go in details for all of them. So I will go more like mentioning like 5 pillars that we think is important to follow. For all what we discussed today, which is very interesting and can bring a lot to our societies, can be done properly without the risk of losing almost everything. So the first one is about cybersecurity is also, as said, very topical with regulators. Last year we had a lot of pieces of legislation where they had a few articles about incident reporting requirements. Just for example, we had GDPR, PSD2, NIS Directive, ECB, the SSM, EIDS, Target 2, etc., etc. Each time we have multiple supervisors to report, national, financial, European, multi-sectoral, is changing all the time. Many thresholds, many time frame, many templates. So for the sake of efficiency, I'm sure you will all agree we need a centralized hub that is collecting all this incident reporting, analyzing them, dispatching them, and at best, advising firms in return. Obviously, and that could be a big market for consulting firms, we need high security of the cybersecurity hub. Because imagine the data they hold. If you are a hacker, you get this data, what you can do is amazing. It could be paradise for hackers. The second pillar is information sharing. So the key there, to boost cyber resilience of financial firms, you need optimal information sharing. So what do we mean by optimal information sharing? Many banks now, especially in the US, are creating platforms to exchange information on cybersecurity. On the other side, as said before, the incident reporting exercise is a coordination, it's an interaction between public authorities and private firms, especially banks. So what we believe is important is to avoid the situation where this incident reporting is just another compliance requirement and nothing else. So there is really push in Brussels, to have like this hub being able to quickly share all this information with the right supervisors and other firms. So you see the risk coming, there is very sensitive data there. So sharing the data of one company on its attacks to the competitor is not the best. So you need to find the right balance, and that's a hub responsibility, the right balance between an efficient collective response and the protection of interest of each firm. For advisor, to get the advisor role, and for a hub like this one, you need a clear political mandate. This is probably coming in the coming years. Finally, and as we're an independent body, we also consider in our task force of this report, consumer associations agenda. So not only the systemic banks, the tech giants, we had also law firm, but also consumer associations. So there are big questions on cybersecurity. It's often a topic, more B2B questions. Not so much what we do with the final consumers. In the PSD2, we had the possibility, they try to protect consumers on these issues, but perhaps it needs to be further, like having cyber ratings. Stop, I don't say we need cyber ratings, but that's a debate we need to have. Like we have like credit rating, this type of issues. Of course, there are pros and cons there, and it needs to be assessed properly. The third pillar is about statistics. every single strong policy has good statistics. In cyber, at the moment, there are as many sources as providers for statistics. There is nothing really consolidated, so we need a EU benchmark for statistics on cyber trends. And one issue particular is the financial damage caused by cyber attacks. At the moment, we hear everything on the contrary. And that's something we really need to reinforce in terms of best practices. Because if you want also the cyber insurance market to emerge properly, you need good assessment of the financial damage. The fourth pillar, so there I put together several initiatives. It's more to reinforce the preventive approach. So the first one, there is a buzzword we hear a lot about, which is cyber hygiene. I never thought 3 years ago we would associate cyber with hygiene. But it's coming, it's there already, and it's quite present. So it's not only consumers, but also firms. But every board, because we are in our task force, we are also with national supervisors and obviously EU institutions as observers, but they were emphasizing a lot the need to have awareness in the boards of the largest banks of the need for cyber hygiene at all levels of organization. There is, at European level, the European Cybersecurity Certification Scheme, which is there to provide certification on software used for cybersecurity. This is very topical at the moment at European level. It's very political as well. We have a cybersecurity agency called ENISA that is playing big there. And that's something that can be discussed, the pros and cons of this, because certification needs to be quite dynamic to follow the pace of cyber insecurity. And finally, the last pillar. So the discussion at the moment is more like this, like, okay, we cannot put the number of attacks to 0. There will always be attacks. So what we need is for banks to be cyber resilient. In case there is an attack, we know how to keep the business working on a day-to-day basis. So to limit the impact. But there will be still attacks that are successful and can be very damaging. So we need specific questions, there are a specific framework to establish there and to boost. The first question is about attribution and criminalization. I'm a hacker in a country C, I'm using a server in a country B, and I'm hacking a company in country A. Imagine the company in the country A first to identify me in the labyrinth, which is a cyberspace, and after to be able to criminalize me. So here again, we are back to information sharing issues. We need strong mechanism for cross-border cooperation on information sharing. Of course, we touch here what we call a national security issue. So this is quite topical at the moment, and it will not be solved, I would say, within 5 years. But we have to go there. The second part of this pillar 5 is the question, and it's quite touchy for financial firms, of remedies and shared liability. GDPR and PSD2 already have some parts of it, and you can imagine consumer association, this is a big part of the agenda at the moment. If you cannot use your credit card for 1 week, do you deserve to get compensation? This is a question. At the moment, there is no clear legislation at European level that says yes, you can get that. It's up to what is in the contract. So that's also a discussion. And finally, I will finish with this one in the pillar 5, the emergency fund. So last September, Commissioner Ansip briefly mentioned the possibility to have a cyber emergency fund. There was no discussion because now there are so many political issues at European level on this cyber agenda. So what would be the idea? We had the financial crisis in 2009. We have refined and we have built tools to be able to prevent another crisis, including by building a resolution fund, for example, against systemic crisis. So the idea would be, do we need this for cyber attacks? That's the question. Because if we say yes, we need to answer first the question of what are the criteria to get access to the fund? Because there are risks, obviously, of moral hazard. It's a concept we hear a lot in insurance. And second thing, because everyone might agree with that, but no one would agree who will pay for it. So will it be something for systemic banks? Will it be something for critical operators, for example, as defined by the NIS? Or simply, we don't need it, and that's it. So that was just a few points on this very topical issue at the moment. We hear a lot. There are a lot of discussions saying from big banks as well, big insurance companies saying the big one will come for sure. I don't know what is a big one. I don't think it has happened, for sure. I don't think we had a cyber systemic attack yet. I'm not an engineer myself, so I cannot say yes or no. But in case it happens, it might be better to be ready for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvain. So I would like to ask for the short comment, Aleksander. For how many banks do you currently work on cybersecurity issues? We don't need the names.
Yeah, I think the cybersecurity is the basic. You are absolutely right. I mean, all the points absolutely agree with you. Starting from the education, awareness, ending up with the monitor the issues, to report the issues. I think the cybersecurity is like a habit. I mean, you need to have a habit to protect yourself. You need to have a habit to review the code, to test solution against the hackers. And I think the biggest challenge now around the globe is related to talents. So, no really people knowing what's going on in the cybersecurity. And the second thing is more and more cyber threat comes because you can. Because of the very low awareness of users and
we're running out of time.
2 minutes. And very low awareness of leaders, I mean management boards running those operations. So summarizing, I think definitely cybersecurity is, for me personally, topic number one, and for financial sector, probably 1 or 2.
Thank you so much. I'd love to leave the last 7 minutes. We have 5-7 minutes for the questions from the. Can we ask for the Slido? Do you have any? Oh, we can even have some questions here and there, even in English. John, I'd like you to maybe choose a question. John. Yeah, you're reading.
I'm reading quickly.
Pick out the question you like and could you answer, please?
I'll pick the first. The next big thing, I think, is the fusion of all of these things together.
Maybe the last one is from you. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Pavel.
Yeah. So I think the next big thing, I think, with regards to all of these innovations and developments is the fusion of this technology together and what it will enable. I think that's a very important point about sort of you're listing out some very specific things. And what we're doing is we're sort of developing, artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, almost in separate sort of camps. But what we think, or what we see, is that actually the fusion of this, developing new services and new offerings, is going to be the real innovation where this will go. It's really difficult to see, these things being on their own in 5 years' time. I think we will probably see platforms that have a fusion of all of them integrated into one.
Thank you. Shanker, did you pick up another question? Or
let me just follow up on John's comment. I would say one of the things around the corner that you should keep your eye on is quantum computing. Quantum computing is coming out of the labs. There are at least 2 or 3 firms already, including IBM, that enable people to actually reach in and do some work on quantum. This is going to creep up on us much faster than we expect, and quantum computing is going to have profound implications because once you get 2 to the power something becomes a very, very large number. Right now, what they call qubits, you can compute with about 50 or 60 qubits, that's 2 to the power 60 states you can simultaneously maintain. When you get to about 250 or 300 qubits, the kind of problems you can solve is mind-bending. Almost all the problems in cryptography can be easily hacked using quantum, and the new classes of problems you can solve in every human endeavor is breathtakingly large, including proteomics, genomics, all the parallel processing. That's around the corner. It's going to have a revolutionary impact 5 years from now.
Thank you. I'm happy that you mentioned quantum computation, because I'm sure that if we meet here next year, we'll probably focus more on this subject. I think we have time for one more, so pick up carefully. Let's pick up the first one. Are fintech companies a real threat for traditional banking sector? This is also a very fundamental question. So who would like to answer that? Yes, Sylvain, and Clive and Sylvain.
No, very quickly. I think it's more the tech giants. What will, I mean, at least in Europe. I don't talk about the US. No? The fintech startups, some are very successful, but so far it's mainly in pockets. I cannot say that banks are threatening their existence against some fintech startup on a large segment of activities. With tech giants, it's another issue. They are not there yet, but if they decide to come...
Thank you, Clive.
Yeah, I think, are they a threat? Yes. Are they going to kill traditional banks and insurance companies? Perhaps, if those banks and insurance companies don't do anything. And I go back to one of the slides on my talk on the telecoms parallel. The telecom sector was highly regulated, government controlled until 20-25 years ago. It was deregulated, and the argument was that the large incumbents would disappear because of too much cost, unions, legacy, and they haven't. They just reinvented themselves or built on services around their core. They've actually downsized, admittedly, they've gotten smaller, but they still exist. I still think the same thing will happen in financial services. And the other thing I'd say is this title FinTech. Financial services has always been FinTech. To Shanker's point, financial services sector has been one of the early adopters of technology generally. So the sector itself has been innovating, but perhaps the pace of innovation has slowed down a little bit.
Thank you. I want to say something at the end. I was recently attending and running a panel discussion on the very energetic small conference with the blockchain enthusiasts. And their final outcome of the discussion was that in 10 years there won't be banks on this planet. So this was an interesting point of view. We'll see. We'll be definitely observing this situation. Thank you so much for today's discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. And I would like to ask our lovely host to share one more interesting thing with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator, Jowita, Michalska. Gentlemen, before I let you go, though, there is a little film I'd like us all to watch together. It's only 2 minutes long. I believe you've got your headphones on, so I'll switch to Polish.